I think it's safe to say that this game for the Louisville Cardinals against the Virginia Cavaliers on Saturday is a must win for Scott Satterfield's team, and they may have to do so without star quarterback Malik Cunningham. We will talk about that and more on today's episode of the show. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode is brought to you by Underdog. Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com with the promo code Locked On and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. As I mentioned, the Cardinals may be without star quarterback Malik Cunningham on Saturday against the Virginia Cavaliers. So let's ask the question, can the Cardinals defeat the Cavaliers with Malik Cunningham? And can they do so without Malik Cunningham? We will then transition into explaining why this game is a must-win for the Cardinals to keep their slim bowl eligibility hopes alive. And then in the final segment, we'll talk about what Louisville needs to do to come out victorious in Charlottesville on Saturday. We'll start out with the big storyline. Malik Cunningham exited the game against Boston College last week due to injury. Didn't play the final two possessions in which Brock Domann came in and really wasn't able to get going all that well. And the Cardinals ended up losing. Not saying that that was the reason why the Cardinals lost, but definitely was not something that helped in the process. Look, this was one of those things that was kind of interesting because I don't think there was ever a set reason as to why he came out or what injury it happened to be. Now, many think that it has to do with a concussion to where he sustained a couple of hits in that game against Boston College. He got hurt, came out, and then went back in and got hurt again. And that's kind of been the consensus from the fan base. Obviously, I don't want to speculate, but it seems like, concussion may be the most likely thing that he's dealing with. And obviously, that's something that you can't rush at all. And there's definitely a set protocol that you have to deal with there. But Malik has been very durable. Sure, he has exited games in the past where, he hasn't been able to finish games, or if he has, he's, been limping and things of that nature. But he's only missed 2 games since 2018. He missed the season opener in 2018 against Alabama. He missed the season opener in 2019 against Notre Dame. So the durability aspect of it really has been something that Louisville fans haven't necessarily had to worry about too much over the past couple seasons since Malik took over as the starting quarterback. Now, obviously, he has exited some games due to injury, and he's had to sit out a couple of possessions. And the Clemson game, you had to sit out a couple of possessions. Wake Forest, Evan Conley had to come in and finish the game, so on and so forth. But in terms of missing a game outright, this is kind of uncharted territory in the Scott Satterfield era for Louisville. So, first of all, let's talk as if Malik were going to play, because right now he's considered day-to-day according to head coach Scott Satterfield. So, it seems like many think that he's going to miss the game against Virginia, but it hasn't necessarily been confirmed nor denied. So, we're going to talk about the possibility of it either happening or not happening. I think that obviously Louisville wins this game, or let me rephrase. I think obviously Louisville has a better chance to win this game if Malik Cunningham is playing versus if he is not playing. I think that the Cardinals being a 3-point favorite over the Cavaliers probably checks out. Malik Cunningham is a player that obviously can sway betting lines and things of that nature because he's so very dynamic and he's a focal point of the Louisville offense. And I think that that's kind of what is scary about this matchup, right, is the fact that without Malik Cunningham, what can we expect from the Cardinals? I think that This segment alone, we'll talk about the hypothetical of if Malik Cunningham can't play, can the Louisville Cardinals defeat the Virginia Cavaliers? If he's going to play, then obviously you can kind of scrap this segment and view it as a moot point. But I think it's a good topic of discussion, and it's one of those things to where, yeah, it's nice to have that continuity with Malik Cunningham over the past couple seasons, but to play the devil's advocate, you know, the next man up mantra and situation at the quarterback position since 2019 hasn't really been one that Louisville fans kind of welcome. Since Evan Conley, won against Wake Forest back in 2019, Louisville's backup quarterbacks haven't necessarily had a ton of success. Malik Cunningham has been backed up by Evan Conley over the past couple seasons. Brock Domann since last year as well. Both of those guys got in against Clemson, didn't necessarily do much at all, couldn't really move the ball well at all. Domann did some good work against South Florida a couple weeks ago. Granted, it was against the Bulls, backups and at garbage time. But Domann completed one of, I think, 8 or 9 passes last week against Boston College, and it was kind of a check down pass to Marshawn Ford. So, that begs the question is, what does Louisville's team look like without Malik Cunningham? Well, first of all, the offensive identity shifts completely because, Scott Satterfield has done a good job of designing the offense around Malik Cunningham. There's a lot of RPO situations. There's a lot of design quarterback runs. A lot of it is utilizing Malik Cunningham's athleticism in the pocket and out of the pocket as well. So with a true pocket passer like Brock Domann, who's listed as the backup quarterback, how does Louisville's offense change at all? Well, it doesn't help that Louisville's rushing attack is hobbled as well. Not only do you have Malik Cunningham day to day, but Travion Cooley, Tyon Evans, both battling injuries. Jalen Mitchell is still trying to fight back from an injury. So at this point, you have Jawar Jordan, and you have, I think, is it Maurice Turner? Is that the fifth running back? I think that's the fifth starting running back. Or fifth starting running back, the fifth running back on the roster. And both of those guys are speed guys. So, you lose your feature backs, so to speak, in Tyon Evans, Travion Cooley. No Jalen Mitchell would be big. And obviously, it hasn't come out and said either way if any of these guys are going to miss the game. So if Louisville's able to get one guy or even both of the running backs, I don't necessarily know that Jalen Mitchell will be available, but if they're able to get one of Evans or Cooley, that obviously would be big news. But I would expect that Louisville's offense, Scott Satterfield, Lance Taylor, try to devise a game plan to where hopefully the rushing attack can set up the play action to where Brock Domann has some open receivers, and he's kind of in like third and short situations. I think that, this Louisville offense has been one that's been so very run dominant over the past couple seasons that it's probably going to be even more so against Virginia. But can Louisville win without Malik Cunningham? That's the big question. And right now, there's not anything that you can point to over the past 3 years, or let me rephrase. Yeah, the past 3 seasons that you're like, okay, I trust insert backup quarterback here to come in and win this game. Now, granted, let's be fair. Brock Domann does have the talent. I'm not saying that he can't come in and win this game. That is not what I am saying at all. So please do not get that twisted. Also, you can make the case that this is the first game that he is prepared for as a starter. Wasn't expecting to get in against South Florida. That was garbage time. Definitely wasn't expecting to get in on the road against Boston College, nor was he expecting to get in against Clemson. So maybe things change if he's given a full week of preparation where he's, preparing as QB1 and as the starting quarterback. So maybe things change. Now, granted, it is the next man up mentality. So, when your number is called, you still have to come in and you have to make plays. I'm not making excuses, but I'm just trying to call a spade here. And looking at this from that aspect, I'd be very nervous if Malik Cunningham can't play. Like I said, not saying Brock cannot come in and, lead the Cardinals against Virginia and, propel the Cardinals to victory. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that there hasn't been one instance in the past 3 years when a backup quarterback has come into the game for Louisville and has truly succeeded. I think the last time of doing so was Evan Conley back in 2019. Since then, he's kind of dealt with injuries and hasn't been all that effective. Brock Domann hasn't necessarily gotten too many opportunities since joining the Louisville program before last season, but when he has gotten his number called, hasn't really made a lot. Hasn't really made a lot of production. So it does beg the question. I think that if Malik Cunningham doesn't play, the Cardinals could be in danger. The ways that they're going to alleviate that is by establishing the running game, taking some of the pressure off, getting Domann's confidence up. We know he has a live arm. He's got solid arm power. It's just a matter of accuracy and trusting his reads and slowing the game down and letting him internalize what's happening on the field. So I think that does he have the talent and the raw tools to be able to go out there and lead this Louisville offense? I think he does. I think that he's got the talent to do so. But judging based upon past results and lack of production thereof, I'm a little nervous. I think that Louisville's chances increase significantly if Malik Cunningham is playing in this game. Obviously, that should go without saying, but it is what it is. So I do want to kind of take the time now to focus on why this is a must-win game for the Louisville Cardinals. We're going to talk about that here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at Underdog. This episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to spice up college football seasons. Three things that I want to talk about. If you don't know, Underdog allows you to pick 2 to 5 players across any team, not just the Cardinals, and decide if they will finish higher or lower than their projected stats. It's available in over 30 states. One of the easiest fantasy to play games out there, and you can win cold hard cash in a single game. I like Drake May higher than 265.5 passing yards against Virginia Tech. I'll take Grant Wells under 220.5 passing yards, even though UNC's secondary has struggled. So do yourself a favor, go check it out for yourself. Sign up with the promo code Locked On, all one word, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Deposit $100, get $100 free. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or Google Play. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On, all one word. So get in on the college football pick'em action today. So I think now, with the Louisville Cardinals, this is a must-win game for Scott Satterfield's team if they want to maintain chances to have bowl eligibility by the end of the season. Now, obviously, I think I just botched the explanation of that and the word choice. But now a lot of people will say, Dalton, the season's over. There's no chance that this team gets bowl eligible when you consider, the daunting schedule that they have yet to face. Look, I get it. It's improbable. It's not impossible, but yes, it is very improbable. The Cardinals have dug themselves into a hole. I get that. You're not surprising anyone by saying that. So I think that, jumping in the comments and saying, why are you even talking about this? The season's over. Get over it. You're not achieving what you think you're trying to achieve. I understand exactly where this program's at. I understand that this team is 2-3 looking down a tough back half of the schedule. You don't have to tell me that. I already know. But I am, for the sake of conversation, talking about this as if, the team is still going to try to fight for it. I mean, Scott Satterfield and company have said that they're not giving up. The players have said that they're not giving up. I told you on Monday that regardless of what happens, I was going to prepare on this show and preview matchups like I would regardless because, I'm not a fair weather fan. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the season's over, why talk about it or anything like that. You do you. I mean, if that's what you want to do, then, hey, that is your ability. That is your right. You can do whatever you need to do. Don't listen. Don't watch the show if that's the case. But on this set segment, we're going to discuss why this is a must-win game for the Louisville Cardinals if they want to try to get bowl eligible. When you look at the rest of the schedule, the last 7 games of the season, it's Virginia, And then you have a bye week. And this game is a must-win game. Number one, because Virginia simply isn't all that good, really. I mean, they're 2-3. Their 2 wins are against Richmond and Old Dominion. They lost to Illinois by 21, got beat at Syracuse, and got throttled at Duke 38-17, snapping the Blue Devils' 13-game ACC losing streak. They're averaging under 20 points a game. Their offense is struggling. With the loss of some coaching staff members and things of that nature, their offensive coordinator, their head coach, so on and so forth. Brendan Armstrong really hasn't had all that great of a season so far in 2022. So, Virginia's not all that great of a team. So that's number one. This is a game that the Cardinals should definitely win. They have the talent to win. They are the team that's favored. Let's say that the Cardinals do win this game. Well, you have to then win 3 out of the last 6, and 4 of those games are currently against teams that are ranked in the top 15. Now, that Virginia game is in particularly, extremely important because, hey, look, there's no gimme game left on the schedule. It's probably the easiest game left on the schedule. James Madison seems like it's going to be a big time trip up possibility. The Dukes have been playing very, very solid. I mean, they beat App State just a couple weeks ago. You have Virginia and James Madison, which if Louisville wants to become bowl eligible, they have to win these games. That's kind of a prerequisite because that even if they win these 2 games, it's not set in stone that the team's going to get bowl eligible. Like, they still have work to do. They have to win 2 of 4 against the teams that are ranked. Hold on, let's see. 2 of the 5. They have to win 2 of the 5 games against some tough teams. So you beat Virginia and you beat James Madison. Let's say that theoretically, then you're at 4 games. You have to beat 2 of Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, Clemson, NC State, and Kentucky. The team would probably feel the best against Pittsburgh and probably Wake Forest. I mean, I don't know. Wake Forest, NC State, and Clemson look like the 3 best teams in the conference. Pittsburgh has struggled, so you can make the case that, let's say you beat Virginia, Pittsburgh, and James Madison, then you have to beat 1 of Wake Forest, Clemson, NC State, and Kentucky. Sorry, I have the hiccups. But look, I think even at that point, right, still things are very, very questionable, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get bowl eligible, and you have to have some things happen. You have to pull off some upsets. You have to pull off 2 upsets to be quite clear, and that's if you beat Virginia. So if you don't beat Virginia, you fall to 2-4. You lose 3 games and you won't get bowl eligibility, or at least you shouldn't. You're not going to get 6 wins. I know that sometimes 5-win teams are getting bowl invites, but in my opinion, that doesn't really count as bowl eligibility. You lose against Virginia, you go 2-4, then you're banking on not losing to more than 2 of Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, James Madison, Clemson, NC State, and Kentucky. And right now, I mean, if the Cardinals can't beat Boston College, if you can't beat Florida State, if you struggle against Central Florida, there's nothing that I'm seeing that I'm looking at and I'm thinking, okay, this team could pull off that upset at Kentucky or at Clemson or against NC State at home or against Wake Forest or even beat Pittsburgh. And, James Madison is lurking on that schedule as well. So, but it all starts with Virginia. If the team wants any type of shot at somewhat salvaging bowl eligibility, it's got to start with Virginia. You don't win Virginia, it's kind of set in stone unless this team wins, astronomically more games than what a lot of people are kind of putting out there. But, Virginia is a must-win game. So what does Louisville need to do to defeat the Cavaliers on Saturday? Well, 3 things. We're going to talk about those here in just a second. I do want to first thank you for making Locked On the Louisville your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On the Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, including YouTube and WHAS 11+, 5 days a week. Your team every day. The Louisville Cardinals will defeat the Virginia Cavaliers if, 3 things in my opinion. Number 1, definitely establish the running game. Number 2, stop allowing big plays in the secondary. And number 3, forcing and capitalizing off of turnovers. Number one, I think, we talked about a little bit, earlier in the show, especially if Malik Cunningham can't go, then the Cardinals are definitely going to want to establish the running game, even more so than they usually do. That is always one of the big keys for me for the Louisville Cardinals because they're a run dominant team and the pass kind of plays off of that. It's going to be extremely, extremely critical that they do so in this one. Well, simply because you would be rolling with what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not gonna say untested, but an unproven. I don't even know why that word couldn't come to mind. An unproven quarterback in Brock Domann. Assuming if Malik Cunningham can't go, I'm not sure if he is or not. But regardless, the rushing attack is going to be very, very key in this one, especially with some players hurt. Whoever's available is going to have to really, really set the tone. The Louisville offensive line is going to have to create those rushing lanes and create those gaps, and hopefully Louisville can, try to get some offensive momentum on in that realm and allow Brock Domann to feast on play action opportunities to where, maybe he has some open receivers, broken down coverage, things of that nature. So the rushing attack, in my opinion, is the number one key for me offensively because this is a Virginia team that defensively, they're not terrible. I guess let me kind of go back to that because, they're not terrible, but they're not fantastic. They're allowing 23 points per game. Louisville's allowing 23.4. They're giving up 355 yards per game. Louisville's giving up 370. Louisville, averaging 209 yards per game on the ground. This is going to be a very, very key matchup to where the Louisville's going to have to rely on that rushing attack to create some offensive momentum. Number two, it's a matter of not giving up big plays in the secondary. We saw what happened when you don't give up big plays. South Florida, we saw what happened when you do give up big plays. Boston College. I thought for the most part, Louisville's defense didn't do all that horrible against Boston College, but the big plays really dictated the flow of the game, and it ended up being one of the main reasons why the Cardinals were not able to come out victorious. Brennan Armstrong hasn't necessarily had the greatest season so far. He's got more interceptions than touchdowns, 4 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He's been sacked 13 times, has thrown for a little over 1,000 yards, completed 52% of his passing. So last year, obviously a better year for the veteran signal caller who decided to come back to Charlottesville for one more go around. But yeah, I think that if there's a couple quarterbacks in the ACC that could really hurt Louisville in the air, it's Brennan Armstrong. He did it last year, especially when Louisville had a 17-point fourth quarter lead and ended up losing to the Cavaliers in that game at Cardinal Stadium. So I think that, limiting the big-time passing plays, not getting burned in the secondary, just not giving up big plays in that part of the field is going to be so key in this one because I think that Louisville's not doing a horrible job at rushing defense outside of maybe that game against Boston College. They're getting after the quarterback and creating some tackle for loss situations, but at the end of my back is completely itching. There's no worse feeling than like trying to scratch the middle of your back where your hands can't reach. But regardless, back on topic, I think that creating situations to where you're getting off the field is big, and it all starts with the Louisville secondary. Thirdly, this may be a little bit of wishful thinking, but creating turnovers and capitalizing off of them. Louisville's done a decent job of creating turnovers in the past couple weeks. Now it's just a matter of capitalizing, not going 3 and out, finding the end zone, not just getting field goals on short field position victories and things of that nature. And that's one thing that Louisville forced 3 turnovers last week in the first half against Boston College and literally had a 2-point lead going into halftime. And the Cardinals weren't even penalized at all in the first half. So that's definitely something that will go a long way, especially at a place where you've only won once since joining the ACC. And that one victory was a Lamar Jackson to Jalen Smith touchdown pass in the back of the end zone with less than 30 seconds to go. So, I think that establishing the run is huge for the offense, huge for momentum. It could also go a long way if Malik Cunningham is out and Brock Domann is forced to be the quarterback in this game. And then defensively, not allowing big plays in the secondary, creating turnovers and capitalizing. I think, it's the little things that add up for Louisville. It's just, some mental mistakes here and there in certain aspects of the field and certain aspects of the game that has really hurt Louisville over the past couple seasons. And those are the three keys of the game, in my opinion. So, but that's going to wrap up this Friday edition of the show. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, go listen to Locked On ACC. That show is also 5 days a week. Candace Cooper does a great job of breaking down all the conference news as a whole. You can find that in the Locked On Louisville podcast on all streaming services. Totally free, like I said, 5 days a week. So that's going to wrap up this Friday edition of the show. Hopefully the Cards can get back to 500 tomorrow in Charlottesville. Go Cards! We'll see you back here on Monday.